So, time to get to the pièce de résistance. This week, I have a fantastic guest, and I'm super stoked because actually we're both in Canada, though in different time zone, and I'm going to bring him on stage right now. Et voilà!
Ta-da!
Look at that. That was magic right there. Monsieur O'Neill, how are you?
Très bien, merci.
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought I'd
I
catch
don't know
I
if you
thought
know.
I'd catch him off guard, but this guy's ready, you know.
Toujours prêt.
Hey, awesome, awesome. How you doing?
I'm good, dude. Yeah, thanks. Good to be here. Good to
Hey,
chat.
man, I'm super happy to have you on. I think we have a lot to talk about, and I think it's been, from what I know from the outside looking in, it was a great story. We'll talk about your come up. So, um, as I've said before in the past, this show is really about some of my guests who come up and tell their story and talk about what it is that they're working on. So, with that being said, and in a phrase I'm sure you're going to enjoy, I'm going to hand over the keys and
Cool.
let you introduce yourself to our amazing audience.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm Shawn O'Neill. Grew up in Newfoundland, Canada, on the East Coast, and now I live in Vancouver, BC. I've been a web performance practitioner for the last decade or so. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that whole journey today. Got two little girls. They're wonderful little kiddos, twin daughters. Um, yeah, now I run the performance consulting division, SpeedSense Performance Consulting at Yottaa. So I'd started a company about 6 years ago that we're going to talk about called SpeedSense. We were recently acquired by Yottaa, which is a bigger web performance business. And so I now lead the consulting division there. So we'll talk a lot about that today, I'm sure.
So, you said you've been in performance for about 10 years now. Um, what was that moment that really got you in?
Yeah, cool. I was working in e-commerce at Mountain Equipment Co-op at the time. For anybody based in Canada, Illinois, MEC, it's kind of like the Canadian REI, or like a large outdoor retailer. Um, and I was heading up the front end team there. I joined as a senior software engineer, and then it became evident like it was this era of responsive web design. We had a separate mobile and tablet and desktop site. We were doing a big rebrand. We were doing a big e-com replatforming, and I was seeing a lot of data from, this is like a list apart, book apart era. Like there was a smashing conference in Whistler that year.
Oh my
I,
God.
it was awesome. And I was just really getting into that space and following a lot of the experts. And I'd become convinced that milliseconds and dollars were correlated. And I really wanted to make some changes on our stack. And I'm sure, like many, passionate people, I kept hearing, yeah, it's important. Yes, we've got 100 other things on our list right now. It's on the list, but we're not going to get to it for like the next 18 months. And so, I got frustrated, but also it was fun to work on the stuff that I was working on. We shipped this big replatform project. It's sort of like my capstone. Anyway, launched the website, and then I branched out on my own and started doing performance consulting shortly thereafter, just helping brands apply best practices to the stack that they had with the team that they had. Didn't have a particular tool set at the time, other than like I'd been a senior software engineer. I'd built some websites. I knew, the best practices. There was no core web vitals yet. This was like in the Rail era. Um, but that was where it all began. Yeah, it's about 10 years ago now,
Wow.
maybe a little more.
That's quite the platform to, have as a sort of like means to get into web performance and apply some of the best practices that you knew of at the time, because Mech is not a small company.
It's true. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm definitely grateful for the exposure. And it's funny how you get there, right? Like I never thought it'd even be in e-commerce. And I studied engineering in Newfoundland, where I went to university, software computer engineering. And I worked in SaaS for a while, and it was a J2EE Java web based app for banks and credit unions for catching fraud and money laundering. And I moved out to Vancouver a few years later, worked remotely with that company back in like 2010 before Zoom. It was tough, but fun. Great company. Anyway, the stack, J2EE it happened to be what Mech was built on when I applied for a job there. And I was like, it just happened to translate. And so you never know where the career is going to take you. And I think a lot of today's discussion will be about zigs and zags and, it just being open. Steve Jobs has got a really good quote. I mean, he's a polarizing guy, but I'm sure people will have heard, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. You can't tell what will lead to what until you reflect back on it. Then it seems obvious. Like, of course I learned Java, and then I went to work at Mac, and then I became a performance expert, and then I made a business and sold it. None of that feels like it's going to happen when you're looking at it from the other side.
Absolutely. And, it's, and I feel that, um, the time that, we've sort of had conversations, I feel like I first came across you or your work specifically when you were at Mech, because I was like, hey, who's looking at the Mech site and, talking about performance, which I thought was, super duper interesting because again, I'd never really come across too many people in Canada that, looked after that. So,
Before Shopify was like the de facto software company in Canada.
and ecom, so
Oh,
there's something that I'd noticed, and we brought this up. You spent some time at Logitech, and I just remember looking at it. I was like, Logitech, like really?
yeah.
In so many words, did you want to sort of like share what that moment was like?
Sure. Yeah. I think today will be a discussion of career exploration in some parts. And that was definitely part of it. When I studied engineering, it was like a co-op program. So I got to do 3 different work terms, or no, sorry, 6 work terms. And my last one was at Logitech in California. I'd gotten really into like machine vision at the time. I built this eye tracking system to move a cursor just with a webcam. So that was like R&D, kind of experimental, a lot of MATLAB designing the algorithm.
Mm,
They wanted me to get it to, what is a proof of concept of how we could track an infrared LED in unsynchronized video. And it was fun. Yeah, it was really cool. It was my first experience in the Bay Area. So I was there for 3 or 4 months in
wow.
Fremont, like East Bay. Yeah, it was awesome. It was also, I was looking to come out to Vancouver around that time as well. And just ended up looking on the West Coast and found this place. I made almost no money, but it had nothing to do with the money. It was all just, this is a really cool experience. Get to go to a cool city.
Yep.
Yeah, it was great.
If you don't mind me asking, what year was this about?
2007, probably.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
talking like iPhone announcement.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just gonna say, like, that must have been like this moment of just like, wow, what's going on out here?
It's funny actually. Yeah, because I had started engineering right out of high school, and then I was like, this is stupid. Why am I here? My guidance counselor said you're good at math. You should do engineering. I ended up dropping out of university, and I was working at Future Shop selling like iPods. Speaking of the Apple, look up their website. What kind of jobs do they have open? Software engineers, electrical engineers, computer engineers. I was like, oh, now I understand why I would go and do that. And so a lot more motivated on the academic side once I had like a vision for where I wanted to take that.
From what I saw again on your bio, you also did this stint at a small company called, oh, I don't know if it was small, but something called Funnel. If you want to
Oh,
sort of like,
funnel. Yeah. Yeah. That was my first foray into entrepreneurship. So a friend and I founded this personal finance habit formation app. Basically, like pay yourself to do the habits you want to build. So
wow,
for me now, like go to the gym, and you'd save money towards something you wanted to buy and like splurge on. So maybe it's a new helmet for my bike.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so you'd pay yourself every time and invest the funds or divert the funds to that account. Anyway, yeah, Funnel was a glorious failure. We had no revenue model. It was me and a founder who also was like part-time. I was full-time on it, but I was just learning web development. This is again, got into responsive web design, got into Ruby on Rails. I learned all that then. But yeah, Funnel, we never made any money. But I learned a ton about, if you're not going to make money right away, you need to raise money right away. If you're going to raise money right away, you're not going to own much of your company by the time it sells. And so if it's not going to be $100 million play, find a revenue stream early.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. So basically, you certainly took some lessons from that moment,
Yeah.
working Funnel, from, learning, responsive web design, which from its sounds of it led you to that role at MEC.
Yeah. Yeah. More or less. Also running out of money. Like, if we're being honest.
Yeah, even the ramen were too expensive.
Yeah, there's also this philosophy, I think, in entrepreneurship where if you have a side gig, it's kind of like we don't talk about that. Maybe it was that case 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It can't be like that anymore. Everyone should have multiple side gigs.
Yeah,
If you're building something yourself,
yeah.
you're never going to become profitable. Like it's expensive to pay for people.
Mhm.
And unless you've got revenue immediately, and we can talk about how I design SpeedSense accordingly. Yeah, you either need to raise money or have a side gig to have the longevity to build to product market fit.
So, lessons from funnel, you move into mech. They're impressed with the fact that you know responsive design, et cetera, et cetera. But this is where you really start to develop your chops for web performance. Um, what were the conversations like when you were at mech and you first proposed the idea of working on performance for their site?
Yeah, Mech, like many, will say, 50, 100-year-old brands, there's decades of tech debt.
Mhm.
And often what I've seen, I guess, in now a decade of consulting in e-commerce is digital first brands like, direct to consumer e-com brands that don't have physical bricks and mortar stores. Think about digital very differently than, Hudson's Bay, is a Canadian
Mhm.
icon, no longer, but we'll say Sears, like, massive brick and mortar companies that ended up having to sell online because everything went online.
Mhm.
The way over historically, the way they've structured their teams and thought about investment in digital, one sees web. I mean, this is obviously a massive generalization, but one sees web as a revenue stream, and the other sees web and digital as a cost center. So, do you put it in IT? Do you put it in marketing? Is it still never clear? Like
Mhm.
even when we're selling performance consulting now, half the time the brand's marketing team is paying for it. Sometimes it's an engineering team. Sometimes it's an e-commerce operations function. Kind of back to that. Like there was no clear buyer. There's no clear person who is responsible for performance, and that's still the case at a lot of brands. Um, there's also just a lot of tech debt. Like 100-year-old business has a ton of inertia and the way we've always done things. And this is true of any brand when they get to be that size. And it's funny because if you're a mom and pop selling $100,000 worth of inventory on Shopify, 100 milliseconds isn't make or break for your business. There are a lot of other things that you could spend that same amount of optimization money on, we'll say, than 100 millisecond delay on LCP. But when you're doing $100 million a year, 100 milliseconds LCP delta could be millions of dollars in incremental revenue. And so it only makes sense to start really investing in web performance at scale when you've reached, escape velocity on the ROI will be positive. If we invest in making this faster, we'll see more revenue because of it. Also, it's a whole lot easier to make a fast website now for mom and pop. Like the tools are more accessible. Um, but it's just challenging to, convince someone to invest in performance at that scale. I'm still sort of dodging your question inadvertently. What were the conversations like at the time? Yeah, lots of tech debt. We have a full roadmap. We don't have any time to focus on this. We know it's important, or we at least have a sense that it's important. There was no real, there was no correlation yet for Google between ranking and performance, which Core Web Vitals introduced and really changed the conversation. Because then marketing starts to care about it. Then it's like, oh, the more we spend on making the site fast, the less we need to spend on SEO or on PPC, and our bounce rates improve. So it was a bit of a nebulous conversation, and it didn't really get traction at the time. I mean, it was always on the backlog, and it's funny because I left MEC for a couple of years, and then I went back there because I saw that there was a posting for an e-commerce product manager, digital product manager to focus on web performance optimization. And I called my
Wow.
old boss and I was like, dude, this is like me. Like, let me come run this project. He's like, 100%, let's go. And so I did. That was kind of the first SpeedSense project, but it was still just Shawn. I hadn't incorporated a business or anything yet. And I ran that for them. And they wanted to see, like, if we spend X on performance, what is it going to turn into and why? They wanted like this dollars to milliseconds kind of ROI calculation. And for them, it was really, really great. It was wildly profitable. We also learned a lot about A/B testing and client-side A/B testing and the impact that that has on performance and conversion. And like, when is it not worth running a test because you're going to lose more revenue to the performance degradation than you will earn from the improvement in CRO, conversion rate optimization. There are ways then, and there we designed a way to run experiments really quickly. Mech now is like stellar case study for how fast their site is. We don't work with them right now. They did a full rebuild a couple of years ago onto like React, Node, Vercel, and it's wild. Like their site is super fast, and we helped get it there. But yeah, it's a cool story.
So you actually had 2 stints there.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
one as
didn't
an
realize.
employee and one as a consultant.
Wow. So basically the sort of like aha moment for them happened maybe after you left, and when they had the posting, you called them back and said, "Hey, like, we're in sync."
Totally. Yeah. And I don't take any responsibility for them realizing, oh my God, Shawn is right. I'm not the
Yeah.
main character. But, they had said, yes, we know it's there. It's in the backlog. We'll get to it. And the time just came. And I didn't wait around for 2 years for that to happen.
Mhm.
For better or worse. I mean, I think I also learned a lot in going on another journey there.
Yes.
But the business caught up to what I was ready to work on. And then I was lucky enough to be able to work on it with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, these things happen, sometimes you're a little too early with some,
Totally.
some ideas.
Yeah,
Um,
actually, even when we did the responsive build, it was like, are we sure we want to do this? Like, no big e-commerce brand has done a fully responsive site yet. Like, there's evidence and proof that a separate mobile experience, a separate tablet experience, and a separate desktop experience can build the optimal UX for each channel and optimal conversion rate. And I was like, guys, we're gonna die if we don't merge these digital front ends.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, it takes like a champion at a company to sort of like really nail the idea that this has to be done. So I know
Yeah.
actually a fellow Tammy Everts
Oh yeah.
talks about having a champion at a company. Someone who is going to be there and champion a particular cause. So it sounds like early on you were probably the only performance champion.
I read her book around then as well,
Yes.
and I was
It
like,
didn't.
oh yeah, she gets it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, she does. Um, so you go back, now you're back at, working with MEC, but under SpeedSense, is this correct?
Not quite. SpeedSense became evident once I'd seen, holy hell, this was a very successful case for these guys.
Mhm.
I should do this more because they didn't really need the help right now. Like you go and with any consulting, the goal is design yourself out, like make yourself obsolete because you've upskilled the in-house team enough to not need them, or it's cheaper to keep the fractional version of you than to hire full-time staff accordingly. Like even now, our performance consulting engagements are way cheaper than a full-time performance engineer, but we help in-house teams, with performance management. I saw really good proof at or at Mech about milliseconds equals dollars. And then I went and just tapped my network. There's a lot of pretty big e-commerce businesses here in Vancouver. So I went to work with Clearly Contacts for a while and did performance with them.
Got it, got it. So you went and, did some work with Clearly,
Mhm.
and that's when more or less SpeedSense was officially SpeedSense.
Yeah, yeah. And it was still just Shawn. I mean, there
Mhm.
was in the early days, in the first 2 years or so, it was just me as a consultant. I was starting to develop we should probably do this presentation at the beginning of an engagement. We should probably talk about metrics. We should probably make sure they have this kind of instrumentation in place. And so I started to evolve like this concept of a maturity model, like where is this brand in their understanding of, I know nothing about performance or we don't need your help at all. Thank you.
Yeah.
And a few people have built maturity models around performance, and there were some really good resources out there. I think there was one actually last year in the calendar, the Web Perf calendar.
Mhm.
So it didn't have processes, didn't have, it was like anyone who's embarking on a new journey and knows more about it than the people around them. Like probably everyone who's now peddling AI didn't have Sensei, didn't have any tools, but realized, the first process was we're going to pull the top 1,000 URLs from your website. I'm going to run them through Lighthouse. I'm going to see what we can see. And this like 24-hour command line job that I'd run from my machine and effectively try to strike this balance between like getting banned and DDoS their site and actually get the test to pass.
Right, right, kidding.
So that quickly became like the output of that was more spreadsheets and more databases for me to filter through which I turned into slides and tickets and presented to the business. That eventually was productized. So ingest data from analytics, run a bunch of Lighthouse tests, get Crux data, get GA4 data, get analytics, or get Lighthouse data, ingest and manipulate that and rank it, and then show the brand where to focus. That became a SaaS platform that we called Sensei. So that launched 2022, 23, something like that.
Okay. So Sensei was definitely not around when you first worked with Clearly, but SpeedSense as a consultancy was basically at its start.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
And it was
Awesome.
just me.
Yeah,
Like any small business, you start with founders, and if
absolutely.
there aren't more than one, then it's the person.
Yep, certainly. Now, here's a quick question. Ultimately, there's a demand for performance because of the landscape we're now in, which is very much mobile first. Were these conversations that you're having with some of these organizations, did they understand that it was a mobile first landscape? Because I feel like still back then it was kind of like, I don't know, I don't know, but we know the data was more or less there already.
The
But it's
trajectory was there for
oh,
sure.
absolutely. The trajectory was like, come on, so,
Mhm.
but what were the conversations like? What did you have any pushback about, the importance of mobile and what was taking place?
No, that's a good question. I think philosophically, I've always been a fan of the mobile first
Mhm,
philosophy. Well, just use the same word twice there, but you get it.
mhm,
Yeah, and if we can make it fast under the most constraints, this is sort of how I pitched it then and how I pitch it now.
mhm.
If we can make it fast for the slow network, low RAM, slow CPU, small screen size, then remove any of those constraints and it's faster.
Yeah.
And so we still focus our optimization on mobile,
Mhm.
mobile web specifically, and occasionally there's a little difference in the experience on desktop. Like some elements are loading in different order. There's some widgets that aren't installed, but yeah, I'm definitely still a fan of mobile first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you can solve it on the smallest canvas, same for UX and UI. I still really believe that, like, let's solve the hardest problem first and scale it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I asked again simply because I do know that, as you mentioned, sometimes you're working with like legacy companies, with tons of tech debt. And quite often enough, you may have a staff there that may not be in tune with the way technology is moving, right?
Mhm.
And in these conversations could be, I don't know. I don't want to say they're hard conversations, but they could be sort of like interesting in that you have to mix in a bit of that je ne sais quoi that UX is, and hardware specs that people may not really understand, and that sort of equals to some of the work that you're doing, or people in the performance space do in general.
Yeah.
So
You raised a topic there I'd like to touch on if I could,
please, by all
around
means.
judginess in the tech space, holier than thou, like in versus out. I've found that you're never, like, every developer ever, let's just assume that every employee ever is doing their best with the skills that they have, with the timeline that they have, and going into an organization and saying, you should have built it that way. How could you not know to
Hmm.
build a responsive website? You're going to make no friends. You're going to get no traction. And it's not about making friends or getting traction. It's about, like, do what is best for that business. So I'm still staunch believer that, like, compassion first for the tech debt. Like, someone built that tech debt because it was the right choice at the time. And sure, retroactively, it might be stupid. I've done a lot of things in the past that I reflect back on now were dumb. But yeah, I think there will be obsolete or out of date methodologies and mindsets in organizations. Meeting them and understanding them and being compassionate to that is a lot different than ridiculing it or shaming someone for holding an opinion that's, like, maybe not the best in today's age with today's tech.
Absolutely. I definitely do agree. I've had conversations about that, but that's for another day. Now, let's get into the idea of speed sense. You've learned a lot between, working at MEC, doing some work at Clearly, and now speed sense is fully established. I'd even say, like, we could even jump into the idea of Sensei,
Sure.
and what that was like, sort of like developing and sort of like almost showing to prospective clients. It's like, hey, here's what's happening in the world right now, and this is how we collect data.
So the initial prototype was, I just talked a minute ago about CSV output, Sean's machine, CSV output presentation. From there, we built a proof of concept sort of in Google Data Studio, now Looker Studio.
Mhm.
So BigQuery instead of a spreadsheet, Looker Studio UI, and then still a local job writing to that BigQuery table, presenting it through Looker. And then we embedded that Looker dashboard into a Squarespace, of all places, website, because it had an easy authentication mechanism. And that was like SaaS 1.0, because we had people pay for access to the report because it had data that was very valuable to them. And this is BI 101. Present the complex data in a digestible and understandable way so that we can action it and run our business. And that was really the first version of Sensei. It didn't have that name yet. It was just like the SpeedSense performance dashboard. We'd sold it to 2 or 3 different brands, and we were monitoring performance through our dashboard. We'd moved all of our jobs to the cloud, so it was like infinitely scalable in terms of like running
Mhm.
queries and jobs and ingestion and aggregation, ETL stuff. And then we went to the government of Canada and said, hey guys, we have a product that some people are paying for, and we would like to bring it to more people and drive down the costs. And so there's this program called IRAP, Industrial Outreach, probably Acceleration Program, if I were to guess. In essence, though, Canada wants more IP here locally because IP is good for the economy. And so once you've gotten to a point in your business where you've gotten some revenue and some traction, if you're not going to seek venture capital or seed capital from that wing, that path, then I strongly recommend seeking non-dilutive capital from your government. Canada's been really supportive. There's 2 different programs. The one I'm talking about now, IRAP. So we'd said, we got this prototype. It's not scalable. We need to do a bunch of one-off stuff every time we bring on a new customer. We want to spend a couple $100,000 to build this to be like an infinitely scalable platform. And so they don't pay for all of it. They pay for some of it. And just to call back, I guess, to my funnel days, building a consultancy inherently generates revenue. And so people will pay for the services and the expertise. And then from that, spinning off a product and productizing the expertise into a dashboard, into a set of tools, into some IP or SaaS is basically the path we followed. And so a combination of customer revenue plus non-dilutive, like grant money, we'll say, from the government helped build Sensei. We ported all our customers over. We were able to drive down costs and create like a new tier. Now we have like active versus passive. But we should probably accelerate into, well, where is it now? Because
Absolutely, I was just going to say that.
okay, so we go for it.
No, which is great because you brought it up, and I'm like, okay, perfect. Let's take a look at what all this sort of input has created.
Let's look at this for now.
Perfect.
So Sensei
Yes.
data sources that we started ingesting, pulling data from GA4, from Core Web Vitals, as in like the Crux data set. We get 2 different kinds of data from Crux, the origin level and the page level. We also pull in at the bottom here competitors. So we get origin level competitor data as well, so that brands can say, okay, where are we? Like, sure our LCP is 2100 milliseconds, but what is Amazon? What is Walmart? Like, our competitors, where are customers going to? The big brands set the expectation for performance. They set
Mhm.
the sort of tolerance for slow. And if your site takes 4 seconds to load and you're selling pens or widgets, and Amazon takes 1 second and they're selling the same pen or widget, like, good luck. So
Yes.
you have to meet that expectation. And I've seen in a few cases now where that tolerance for slowness is industry specific. Like, if you're going to buy a Tesla, where are you going to go besides tesla.com or maybe the dump? No offense to anyone who owns one, but I have
Right.
Canadian. I have an opinion of Tesla right now.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, there are certain things where you can only get in one place, and brand
Yes.
affinity at some point outweighs. Like, if you're going to buy Nikes, I guess you could get them in other places, but you'll tolerate some slowness for a really cool, unique experience on Nike.com. Anyway, so we run synthetic tests on the most popular pages. We pull in the Core Web Vitals data. I've seen, Google had all these data sources, GA4, Core Web Vitals, and Lighthouse, but GA4 tells you where the traffic is and how it's converting. The Crux data set and like Search Console will show you where performance problems are. Lighthouse will show you sort of what to do about performance problems, but none of them say like, this is your most important page. This is how much traffic it gets. This is how much revenue it generates. This is what you should do to make it faster. And this is how fast it ought to be. And so this is sort of the merger of all of those things that became Sensei, where we present, the top here is sort of a bubble chart of where you would be versus your competitors. And then we break that down for each brand. You can explode the bubble into the constituent page types that make that up. So your product pages are faster or slower than your blog posts, for instance. And then you can drill into that further and say, okay, of all of my product pages, are there some that, I've embedded a video on the page and so it's got a performance issue? One of the challenges with like Lighthouse is, or any synthetic testing tool, is you run one test on one page and it gives you a dozen or 50 things to do. Going then and implementing those things may be a big waste of time, because who knows if you pick the right page and if the thing you chose to work on is spread across the whole site. And so one thing that this lets us do is run the synthetic across the brand and then say, oh, listen, sure, there's this 10 millisecond fix on your homepage, but that's actually happening everywhere and it's pretty trivial. So we weigh then the outputs on 4 different criteria. I could show the platform a little, I guess. Let's just switch tabs here.
Boom. So now we are looking at.
So now we're looking at an aggregation of Lighthouse opportunities and aggregated by file, like by asset instead of by page.
Okay.
So I can say, this cookie law banner, for instance, this is all test data, has a logo embedded in it. It's loaded early. We know cookie law is not like visually presenting a banner at all. It's affecting 88% of the traffic. It's very low complexity because deferring an off-screen image is not hard to do. And it's affecting 5,000 of our synthetic scans over the last week or whatever that is. And so this lets you look then at for a given opportunity, what are the pages that it's affecting? We can also filter by like, I just want to work on the easy stuff. I just want to focus on rendering versus interactivity. So a few different ways to slice and dice the opportunities in a Lighthouse scan. And then we come back to presentation of trend data over time. So the top right corner here, we think of it like Gartner quadrant, like up and to the right is fast. I don't want to do too much of a product tour on Sensei because this is being merged into the Yottaa tool set now. We should probably pivot to talking about where this brought us. But creating SaaS from consulting and having the ability to scale that and just present like very clear and actionable insights and like to-dos, basically performance optimization opportunities to our customers is really what prompted that whole discussion of an acquisition.
Yes. And so, let's get to that. So one day you're basically, you wake up in, your usual morning and there's a knock at the door. Someone's got this big Yottaa jacket and it's like, Shawn, how you doing? Yeah. And they're like, how you doing?
Yeah. For
So
early, man.
Exactly. Precisely. So how did that conversation get sparked?
Sure.
How did the fit really take place?
Yeah, cool. So I've been working with a fellow Vancouverite e-commerce practitioner, thought leader, Linda Bustos. We did some collaborative content. Actually, we just posted a video today.
I saw it.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So Linda, we've been working together for a couple of years on content. She's got a great sort of resource in this ecom ideas project that she runs. Anyway, we put out a video and someone in her network saw it and was like, oh, who's this guy? This is cool. I like what you've made here. And so he reached out and said, I'd like to chat. I work at Yottaa, and I'd known Yottaa forever. Like Yottaa tried to sell their CDN to me when I was working at Mech to make the website faster. And so I've known of that business. And so I was like, sure, of course, we'll have a conversation. We had lots of conversations with and partnerships with other vendors and agencies and stuff as consultants. And they were looking for someone to keynote their all hands in the next month or so. This was like middle of last year. So I was like, cool, yeah, happy to put together a presentation about how we see the world, how we work with businesses, what the problem is in the space. And that resonated really well. And so around September, October, like late last year, I started having conversations with the CEO and he was like, I like what you've built. And I think one thing that was clear for them was they used to run a CDN. They used to be a CDN business. I should say we, because now I'm part of Yottaa. This is before my time though, so it's they. I wasn't there. They sort of realized that the opportunity for them was bigger if they let a CDN business manage the CDN and they sort of operate it for brands. So they partnered with Fastly, moved all that infrastructure over there, and they manage Fastly infrastructure now for big brands. Instead of a brand installing Fastly and having to hire 2 or 3 DevOps engineers to manage all the rules and configuration, Yottaa provides that as a service. The other thing they provide as a service is sort of this like first party versus third party code acceleration platform. It does a couple things. It does RUM monitoring, so you can see real user data for performance in real time. And it sort of acts like a tag manager to determine which code is first party code and which is third party code, creating this big library of all of the third parties that they observe across thousands of sites. Which ones can we safely deprioritize so that we're not interfering with early page load lifecycle, LCP, INP, and let these third party things load later. As an engineer 10 years ago, I thought, well, I can just defer third parties. I mean, I couldn't 10 years ago, but there's ways to do that. What gets challenging is when you got like 3 or 4 different dev teams, which are using 2 or 3 different tag managers, and some people are embedding things in the head, and some stuff is in GTM, and some stuff is in tag manager from another agency, and they've got another tag manager. Like, it's just this cascading problem. It's challenging. So what they didn't do and what they asked us about was, listen, we can help brands with their third party code. We can help them on the CDN. We see lots of benefits to both. A few have come to us and said, we still manage code. There's our first party code that's kind of a mess. Can you help us fix it? And they were like, well, maybe SpeedSense can. And so that was where that conversation began, because that was all we ever obsessed with, was help the teams make the site faster with the code that they have, with the team that they have, instead of building it all from scratch. So late last year, middle of like Christmas time, they communicated intent to acquire SpeedSense after some conversations. They also really like that our data sources in Sensei are very complementary to the data sources they have. So we didn't have first-party RUM instrumentation, and that's a big thing to build, but we do have synthetics, and they didn't have that. And we also have Core Web Vitals integration and GA4 integration, and they didn't have those. And so now the vision for this year is, let's merge all of those together. And when you do cross-institutional analysis or cross-brand analysis on, third parties and RUM data and Core Web Vitals, you can infer a lot about what is the most impactful change to make, and direct a development team to be like, this is specifically if you can do one thing this sprint, this is the ticket you should put in your backlog, instead of like, how do I wade through the sea of a million different things that I could do on my website? So that's a little of the why and the when. And then the whole like due diligence process almost killed me, but was fun as well, because as an entrepreneur, I didn't know if it was going to happen. You never know if it's going to happen and go through until the last day, until the signatures are signed. And so I was probably 3 months, like Jan, Feb, March. Yeah, March 10th is when Yottaa officially acquired SpeedSense, and we became their consulting division in-house. The last quarter since then has just been sort of full steam ahead on spinning up the performance consulting division internally to support their portfolio of brands that they already have. And then what does the merger of Sensei plus the Yottaa Web Performance Cloud product look like? And that I just got off a call for that this morning. It's really fun to talk about that.
Awesome. We'll definitely have to discuss that in details, what that's planning to look like, as I've seen like similar situations develop. Something that I know we talked about prior to the stream in a conversation, you had mentioned building out sort of like an internal web performance consultancy, and how you had brought on some people that you sort of come across through socials or seen some of their work. Did you want to expand on that?
For sure. Yeah. I can't be an expert in everything. Like, I was good at Java. I'm not good at React. I'm not good at Shopify. Not good at WordPress. But I know the fundamentals of web architecture, and I think that's important. But but we do need people who are experts in all of those stacks. And so I've been lucky enough to get to work with a lot of really good performance experts, both around the world and across a variety of different technologies. And so we have a flexible bench of performance consultants who can, work on an audit here and there, or consult a client here and there. Because I'd found just rewinding all the way back to 10 years ago, it would have been sweet if I could try my hand at performance consulting, or apply that skill set that I was passionate about and good at, but didn't have the ability to do it in-house. And so some of the folks that are on our bench definitely fit that criteria of like, I've got a full-time job at a big e-com brand. We don't have the capacity to invest in performance, but I want to keep my chops up. I love this space. Can we work together? And so that's how it works. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
And I guess you just kind of keep your eyes peeled on particular people and some of the work that they share. Because again, I get back to the idea that the content that you created with it's Linda.
Yep.
Yeah, the content you created with Linda is what got you noticed by Yottaa. Now, are you also kind of keeping your eyes peeled on others who might be sort of like sharing material on socials just to say, hey, I'm in perf and this is what I'm noticing. This is a little write up that I have.
For sure. Yeah. And
Awesome.
just thinking about the first time I hired anyone for SpeedSense, there was one applicant. There was two applicants, but one actually completed the code challenge.
Hmm.
Um, and now we get like we had opened a bench a couple weeks ago to expand capacity a little, and we had some incredible people applying. Like so much talent. I'm just totally blessed to have that level of network, right? And so I follow a ton of people on LinkedIn is where to find me mostly,
Hmm.
or SeanO.ca will just take you right to my LinkedIn. Yeah, when the time comes for us to meet someone new, then that's the network that I'll tap.
That's awesome. I love this. I love this story. I feel like we're definitely going to need a part two here because I think we're ending right at the time that, this sort of like merger and this sort of collaboration is actually starting to blossom. And I'd love to hear some more details. But, in case people are wondering what you have planned for the future, what would that be in, say, like 2 or 3 sentences?
Oh, yeah. Makes Yottaa the one-stop shop for performance. I know it's not just a product problem. It's not just a people problem. It's not like a tech problem necessarily. It's a bit of everything. It's not just an engineering. It's not just marketing. It's not just ops. It's a bit of everything.
Mhm.
And so continuing to build the one-stop shop, right?
Mhm.
I'm really liking that. What's next for me? Yeah, I'm going to be here for a couple of years. I see a lot of opportunity here,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's exciting. So you're right. It feels like the end of one chapter for sure, and the beginning of the next, and it'll be really exciting to see what comes in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And just as a reminder, I think you mentioned it at the very start of the stream, but your new role at Yoda is
Vice President of Performance Consulting,
awesome. Awesome.
and our team is
Fantastic.
actually called SpeedSense Performance Consulting. So we continue to exist as a Canadian entity within the bigger Yoda parent company.
Ooh, that sounds like amazing paperwork.
Oh, it's so good. There was one call that had like 8 different law firms or something, maybe 6 law firms. Yeah, it was crazy.
Awesome. Awesome. I know you mentioned it, but if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what and where?
Yeah, SeanO.ca will take you right to my LinkedIn. That's really the only social media that I use much right now.
Awesome. I totally get it. Um, Sean, man, thank you very much. That was awesome. That was everything that I thought we'd talk about. And, I do believe, first of all, I think it's a fantastic story. And also being from the West Coast and, Canadian org, I don't often get to have that conversation. And yeah, like this is something that I was definitely looking forward to.
Me too.
And with that, have yourself a blessed day. Sean, any parting words?
No, man. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to chat, Ali. Good job on this stream. I
Oh,
want to see
it's
you keep going.